You're watching Talking About Orcs. In this episode of Talking About Orcs, I'm going to be going over how to convert or build a Loota from bits. Lootas are quite expensive, running at about $22 per 4 models. You actually get 5 in the box, but one's a mech, so that doesn't really help you much. But we're going to build a Loota today out of just some random crap. So first off, let's go over the list of stuff we're going to need. First is a Orc Boy. This one happens to be a black reach body, but you can use any legs and torso and head that you want. I haven't glued the head on yet. And you can see I cut the arm off already this is the guy from one guy I did for my last video where I used the jig to size the guy's arms. But for this particular case, it doesn't have to be perfect, so just cut them off and file it, and you can use any black reach body you want. The next thing we're going to need is 2 pistol hands, preferably ones that hold the pistol level, one for each side. And what this will do is this will give you the correct location of the hands to mount to build the frame on for the gun. Next is some heavy weapons. In this case, I have an old guard autocannon, which is perfect because that's what Lootas are basically the same stat as. And then I also added got a heavy stubber and just some random Shooter, which I was going to use because it's got the just cuz. Last thing we're going to need is shoulder pads. Shoulder pads really aren't necessary, but they make it a lot easier. So these are just 2 random shoulder pads I have. So, and of course in all the basics, cutters, base, a flat file. This flat file works really well for this because most of what you can do is not that complicated. And super glue, and strips. You need to build the frame out of something. So this is what I use here. I have 0.04 by 125 strips styrene. 06 strips will work too, but I prefer the 04 because they're flexible and a little easier to work with. Of course, a hobby knife. Can't forget the knife. Stay up. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these arms. I got 3 arms here somehow. That one's not cleaned up. I've already gone and cleaned up the mold lines and stuff here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the pistol parts off these 2 pistols. Just get old. You can use these with clippers, but I just prefer using a knife. Nice sharp blade will just make mincemeat of this. Okay. So here we have trimmed down pistol. Now I'm just going to trim it out a little bit, sand it down, get ready for the sand it down, file it down, same difference. Get it ready for accepting the harness. Now this one's even better because it's got, I don't know if you can tell, but it's got the trigger guard, the finger guard around the trigger, which makes it even better for this because then we can just cut it off right there at the guide and we'll have a nice little box for the trigger to sit in. Okay, so there we have the second pistol. So I'm going to pause it here. I'll be right back. I'm going to glue things together here and get ready for the next step. So here's where we're at after a quick glue together. You can see I get my hands in a very Loota-like position. Now this is only if you want to do it like a GW Loota. You can do it in the Rambo style where he's just holding onto the gun with like a big Shooter, like a really big Shooter, which is, I've done several like that, of course. So that's always an option. So now we'll go on to the next step. Also, you notice the guys with the bar up top here on top of their shoulder blades. I like this too for Lootas because again it gives you more of a logical place to attach things. So I'm going to clear off these rivets here real quick. Now I'm going to add in the shoulder pads. What the shoulder pads will do, as I said, is it gives you a foundation to glue the frame and the gun onto. Okay, so I've glued the shoulder pads on. I kind of trimmed off some of the top bar, glued on the shoulder pads, let it sit for about 5 minutes, let everything kind of firm up a little bit. So now we can continue on beginning the build, beginning the frame and the gun mount. So I'm going to start by putting a piece of strip over the top here. And this isn't precise, these are orcs after all, So just whatever looks good. Lots of glue. Now this is slow drying gap filling super glue, which when you're doing random stuff like this is probably better than a thinner glue that would run. I think the only time I use my thin glue anymore is when I'm doing cork bases, and I saturate the cork with the super glue. Now I'm going to put one up front here too as part of his frame. I didn't get arms quite perfect. They're not flat, unfortunately. I'm just going to stick this piece here right around in front. Gap filling super glue will stick around. It's a little thicker and will stay where you need it more. Okay, the head's on, but I haven't actually glued it on, so it'll make it easier to paint, but I have to leave it on so I don't make it so I can't put it on after he's painted. So there's that. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Also picked up a few pieces of scrap plastic card just for designs and stuff later. So now I'm going to start working on the gun. So I've already cleaned up all the mold lines here. So I'm going to trim off the little peg, and this is where the frame's going to sit on, so I'm going to trim this off here. This accoutrements here. See, half the cartridge is missing, which is fine. They're Orks after all. So I'm going to just take a piece of plastic card. Again, kind of sort of mark it to an almost appropriate size. And trim off anything that's going to get in the way of a flat bond. What we can do is just turn the camera a little bit. Of course, it gives you a nice flat surface. You can always do glyphs and stuff on there. And yeah, and of course, if you want to leave the Imperial Eagle on here, you can. I'm just going to kind of trim it up a little bit, screw it up, really cut it off, make it obvious that's where it was. It's just been desecrated. Okay, so here's the big step. Glue the gun onto this little piece of plastic card, right over the shoulder pad. Oops. And hold it there for a little bit while it sets. Okay, and I've also taken the liberty to cut the hand off the Loota, and I'm going to prep the this heavy stubba here for the other side. And cutting this off flat. I don't need the targeting thingy anymore. Looks like I got all the mold lines. Left a couple mold lines on. That's not good. So there's my heavy stubber. File this down a little flatter. So this is definitely more of an art than a science. And there's no wrong way to do it. There's no right way. So now we're going to grab a little glue, stick the heavy stubber on the other side. And my hand's in the way again. Good for it to set. As you can see, he's already coming along quite nicely. And it's obvious that he is a Loota at this point. And as far as the big shooter goes, where am I going to stick this thing? Probably off to the side of the autocannon. He's coming along quite nicely. Obviously a Loota. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to let the glue set for a little bit before I go on to the rest of the frame, which is very important. I found to be very important because if you start messing with it too soon, you're just going to undo all your work and it just becomes a big mess. So I'll be back in a few minutes when this is done drying.